It's Thursday, March 5th, 2009, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.normal.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers, and welcome to the podcast. We've got plenty of good stuff coming up on today's Daily Audio Stash. Before we get to that, I do want to mention an excellent video that we have posted up on the stash. This is from a press conference from the Marijuana Policy Project announcing a study about faulty drug testing, these kits that they use for field testing by law enforcement out on the roads there, come up with false positives quite often. And not only had I just posted that video, but then I also got in my email from someone who works in the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers a picture of a dark chocolate Hershey's Kiss being evaluated by one of these field tests and coming up positive for THC. So get yourself informed about this and check out that video at stash.normal.org. Also, just wanted to indulge just a little bit. Got an email from my old dad, who's turning 67 here at the end of this month. And you can read more about my dad out on the Stash blog. But he sent me a joke that I thought would be a good little joke for the Stash. So here goes. A DEA agent stops at a ranch in Montana and talks with an old rancher. He tells the rancher, "I need to inspect your ranch for illegally grown drugs." The old rancher says, "Okay, but do not go in that field over there." The DEA agent verbally explodes, saying, "Mister, I have the authority of the federal government with me." Reaching into his rear pants pocket, he removes his badge and proudly displays it to the farmer. "See this badge? This badge means I am allowed to go wherever I wish on any land. No questions asked, no answers given. Have I made myself clear? Do you understand?" The old rancher nods politely, apologizes, and goes about his chores. A short time later, the old rancher hears loud screams and sees the DEA agent running for his life, chased close behind by the rancher's prized bull. With every step, the bull is gaining ground on the agent, and it seems likely that he'll get horned before he reaches safety. The agent is clearly terrified. The old rancher throws down his tools, runs to the fence, and yells at the top of his lungs, "Your badge! Show him your badge!" Okay then, coming up on today's Daily Audio Stash, we're going to go down to Southern California and visit with our California correspondent Terry Joyce, who brings with her DJ Kuti from the Patients Advocacy Network, and we're going to discuss the effect of Eric Holder's announcement of the end of DEA raids on the politics and reform efforts for medical marijuana in California. It's Rockin' Thursday for our daily Toker Tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, and we'll be hearing from Old Bull with a song called Grower Man, And in our second interview segment, Tanya Davis from the Ohio Patients Network is here to tell us about a sad case of a 62-year-old woman named Susan Stevens who's facing trial for her cultivation of medical marijuana. We've got our finger on the pulse of the cannabis community, and we're so glad you've joined us. If you have any questions or comments about the stash, send us an email at stash@normal.org. And that pulse is quickening, so we better get right to it. It's time for your Normal Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as in multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our normal daily audio stash, Hemp Headlines. Minnesota bill aims to aid farmers with new but controversial crop. It can be made into paper, rope, food, biodegradable plastic, and even low-carbon concrete. But in Minnesota, it is illegal to grow hemp. A bipartisan group of legislators is hoping hemp production will be a boon to Minnesota farmers and manufacturers as demand for the plant and its byproducts continues to grow. The Industrial Hemp Development Act, House File 608, would allow the state to issue licenses to qualified farmers who pass background checks. Canada already allows for industrial hemp production, and North Dakota has passed laws to allow its farmers to produce hemp, only to be stymied by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. Hemp farmers are required to gain a permit from the DEA, but the agency has continued to reject the applications of North Dakota farmers, prompting them to file suit against the federal government. 6 other states have legalized hemp production: Hawaii, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, Montana, and West Virginia, yet none is producing the crop because of DEA resistance. The hemp bill has been offered half a dozen times before in Minnesota, but met with failure after posturing by law enforcement groups, which have said that policing farm fields for marijuana will be impossible if those fields all look like marijuana. Hemp is related to marijuana in the same way that cauliflower is to broccoli. Both are the same species, but breeding has given the two plants very different characteristics. While marijuana contains enough psychoactive chemicals to produce a high, hemp contains so little that a high is virtually impossible. Okay, first of all, controversial maybe, but new? Somebody needs to read their American history. We've been using hemp in America since the founding of the colonies. In fact, it was the law that you had to grow hemp in the colonies. Hemp was used on the Conestoga wagons that came across the Oregon Trail. Hemp was used all the way up until the 1930s when it started to become banned in most states and eventually banned with the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act. And even then, in the 40s, when the supply of hemp from the Philippines was interrupted, we had the Hemp for Victory program where our farmers were growing hemp for the U.S. World War II effort. So don't tell me new crop. And the other thing I always wonder is, how is it that police in Canada, not to mention China, Australia, Europe, and all around the world, can differentiate a field full of tall, reedy hemp from a field of big, bushy marijuana? But our American police seem unable to do so. Isn't it odd to have law enforcement groups opposing the planting of an industrial crop that's related to a drug crop because they're too ignorant to tell the difference? What's next? A ban on powdered sugar and insulin shots? Mixing tobacco and cannabis increases THC vaporization in tests. Medicinal cannabis has attracted a lot of attention in recent times. Various forms of administration are used, of which smoking is very common, but the least desirable. Smoking cannabis generates a large amount of unwanted side products, of which carcinogenic compounds are the most dangerous. A common practice among recreational drug users, and to a lesser degree patients who use cannabis as medicine, is to mix the cannabis material with commercially available tobacco in order to increase the burning efficiency of the cigarette and to reduce the overall costs of the cigarette. In this study, cannabis material has been mixed with tobacco in order to determine whether tobacco has an influence on the amount of and ratio between tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, cannabigerol, CBG, and cannabinol, CBN, administered while smoking. A small-scale smoking machine has been used, and cannabis mixed with various ratios of tobacco was smoked. The trapped smoke was quantitatively analyzed by high-performance liquid chromatography, and the amount of THC, CBG, and CBN was determined for each cigarette. We have found that tobacco increases the amount of THC inhaled per gram of cannabis from 32.7 milligrams per gram for a 100% cannabis cigarette to 58.9 milligrams per gram for a 25% cannabis cigarette. This indicates that tobacco increases the vaporization efficiency of THC by as much as 45% under the conditions tested. Shorter. Blunts pack a bigger buzz. However, if you're looking to increase the vaporization efficiency of THC, just spend the extra dough on buying a vaporizer and lose all the carcinogens from any kind of smoke. I hear that tobacco stuff is addictive and dangerous. Canadian couple lose children over medical marijuana garden. From Cannabis Culture magazine. The family of a woman who used marijuana to ease the pain of a spinal injury had their house raided and ransacked by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police last week after the police received an anonymous tip about a smell emanating from the home. Although authorities found only a few marijuana plants, they have condemned the home and placed the children in foster care under Family Child Protection Services. On Thursday, February 19th, Kim McNerney, a human resources manager for the government of Northwest Territories, her husband Craig, and their two boys aged 1 and 3 were shocked when the RCMP burst into their Yellowknife home without a search warrant, knocked holes in walls, sliced open new baby mattresses, and took both children away. McNerney says she previously visited her doctor about legal medical cannabis use regarding a spinal injury and the Health Canada program, but the doctor refused to discuss it with her. After trashing their house, police then called the fire marshal, who arrived and condemned their home as a grow-op for their small, personal medical closet garden. When people blithely say, "Oh, nobody goes to prison for marijuana," like our former drug czar John Walters, I point them to cases like this. Imagine body-armored, black-booted police knocking down your door, setting off flashbang grenades, zip-tying you and your spouse and your children in your own home, and holding automatic assault rifles to your head while they go about destroying your home and property, all because of your houseplants. Whether you spend a day in jail or not, whether you are arrested or charged with any crime or not, your life is forever changed. These tactics during these raids include destroying personal property and even killing family pets in order to terrorize and intimidate the citizens being raided. These might be tactics to consider if you're raiding Scarface's cocaine and firearms-laden Miami estate. But we're talking about a young family with toddlers, a teenaged government clerk, for Pete's sake. This prohibition even intimidates the doctors who have the perfectly legal option of recommending government-supplied medicinal cannabis all across the country of Canada. Canada has 10 times the population of my home state of Oregon, yet Oregon has 10 times as many registered medical marijuana patients, and we don't even have government-backed health care like Canada does. People here actually have to pay doctors out of their own pocket to become patients. If only Mrs. McNerney's doctor had helped her become a registered Canadian patient, we wouldn't be talking about this story today. Clay County Sheriff makes beer run for drug officers. Hayesville, North Carolina. Narcotics officers assigned to a 2-county drug task force drank beer and ate pizza outside the home of a suspected marijuana dealer after executing a search warrant there, authorities acknowledged Monday. The incident nearly 2 years ago became public last week after the prosecutor trying the case that came from that search questioned the officers about the beer and pizza on the witness stand. No one was drunk that day in July 2007, said Clay County Sheriff Joe Shook, who crossed the state line into Georgia to get the beer because his county is dry. Not only were they drinking on the job, but the sheriff crossed the state line to get alcohol because there's a prohibition on alcohol in his county. Pot? Kettle? Black? Anyone? Anyone?
Bueller.
Let's see. For a couple of us, just smoking a joint and eating pizza in Virginia, that would be 30 days in jail, $500 fine, and loss of driver's license for 6 months. Hopefully we were sitting on the curb outside our car blowing that joint, or we'd also get a driving under the influence of drugs charges. That seems fair, right?
So here's the deal. We've got this new president who seems really cool. I mean, the guy's well-spoken, he's open-minded, he seems to listen to people, and he's extremely well-educated. I mean, he graduated from Harvard Law School. But this is a guy who's admitted to smoking marijuana, that illegal leaf that just ruins people's lives. How could the president of the United States have ever done such a thing? Maybe because he knew it was less addictive than both alcohol and nicotine, and knew it can be consumed responsibly. But it's probably been a while since he smoked a joint. So if I had one thing to say to Barack Obama about cannabis, it would probably be something like, hey dude, I'm one of 80 million people in your country who has smoked marijuana, and so are you. Or maybe I would say over 700,000 people were arrested in this last year for marijuana-related charges. Or something like, let's re-examine this law altogether. Or possibly that $1.3 billion is spent annually fighting marijuana, not including the cost of prison management and construction. Or I might just end up saying, hey man, you know the facts. Let's fix this mess.
Weed.
That's Hooey Valley, hooey-ha!
Weed.
Where any office boy or young mechanic...
Now it's time for a report from the epicenter of American cannabis culture with our Southern California correspondent. You know her from ComedyNation.com and her appearance as a finalist on Season 1 of NBC's Last Comic Standing. It's our friend, cannabis comedian and marijuana activist, the lovely and talented Terry Joyce. Terry, how you doing today?
I am doing great. I'm doing great. And one of the reasons is that I visited my favorite dispensary, the pharmacy in West Hollywood, last night.
Oh, really? And what are you doing now these days at that dispensary? Anything for fun?
Oh, well, you know, there is actually we had karaoke there.
Karaoke at the dispensary.
Karaoke when you go to get your medicine. You can sing karaoke.
Oh my!
And I did it, and I got a free little brownie.
Now they don't give you the quality of the medicine based on the quality of the singing, do they?
Absolutely not. I don't think so.
Thank goodness.
I think I won them over. I do. I think that I got special treatment because because I was so good at my karaoke singing. No, actually, I sang David Bowie's Let's Dance.
Oh, that's a good one. Stevie Ray Vaughan plays the guitar on that. A lot of people don't know.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Stevie Ray Vaughan was hired by David Bowie to be his guitar player for that album, the Let's Dance album. And then once David Bowie started to go on tour and said, "Hey Stevie, you'll have to wear this fancy outfit," Stevie Ray Vaughan said, I don't wear fancy outfits, man. So that was the end of that. But, just a little music trivia there. I think that's a good thing, this karaoke at the dispensary. I'm in favor of anything that helps people to build more community. A lot of these patients that are, using medical cannabis, they don't have a lot of opportunities to get out and go to different places and enjoy themselves because of restrictions on, marijuana. So, I think this is a great thing.
Yeah, I do too, and it kind of. I mean, the one thing I like about the pharmacy is that it's very. They're open. They're open on the street. You come in, you check in at the computer. They cross-reference the fact that your recommendation is good. You go inside. On the side, and it's fun. It reminds me of a spiritual health food store. They have different herbs that can help different ailments, and then there's also marijuana. And a lot of times they'll have a little musical trio, but this time there was karaoke, and I'm a karaoke whore.
Well,
I am. I love karaoke.
I guess so.
I have karaoke friends. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to hit up a karaoke bar sometime when I'm in Southern California the next time, okay?
Okay, all right.
Well, speaking of Southern California and just California in general, there's been some really great news that we're all celebrating, and you've brought, again, our friend Dejay here to talk about it, so let me just let you take care of the introduction there.
Yes, we want to bring Dejay Kuti back on to the show. She is the president of the Patient Advocacy Network, and she's part of this wonderful victory that we've had with the Supreme Court. And so I want to introduce her back to the show. This is Dejay Kuti.
Hi, Dejay.
Hi, welcome. Yeah, we've had some fantastic news. I mean, I think the best news that we've had, and one of the biggest successes the Patient Advocacy Network has had, is Richard McCabe and Joanne Cates had their charges dropped against them on Monday.
Excellent.
They're a fantastic attorney that we helped them retain and raise money for. Had San Bernardino County authorities with their tails between their legs running, and they're going to get their property returned.
That's great.
That's what the Patient Advocacy Network is about, is advocating for those individual cases. And then, all the way to advocating on a larger level. We recently had a conference call with the House Judiciary Committee staff to talk about reprioritizing the DEA's funding initiatives such that there won't be any further raids here in Southern California. And very soon after our conference call, I think to the surprise of many, Eric Holder was prompted to make a statement just from a very pointed question from the media that called him on the carpet, that said, President Obama said that the raids were a waste and that he would not use federal resources to undermine state law. However, since his inauguration, we've had these raids. So what's the policy? And it put Eric Holder on the carpet, where first he continued to reiterate that President Obama is his boss and that he will be following the directives of the White House, which would be a surprise to many, that federal law enforcement and the White House would actually communicate and work together. And he went on to say that ending the medical marijuana raids is now American policy.
Yeah.
It didn't say that the raids were over. It just said that ending them was now American policy. That, of course, did not change federal law. Congress has not passed anything. What that means for people to kind of wrap their mind around and understand what that means for us is that it appears the Department of Justice is going to reprioritize the DEA's funding such that going after medical cannabis-related facilities in states that have medical cannabis laws is going to not be one of their funding initiatives.
Yeah. And this has to be an enormous sea change politically for people that are working in California, with the legislators there not having to fear this federal interference anymore, I imagine.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I've worked with many cities throughout Southern California to draft regulations for either, the storefront dispensaries or patient gardening collectives, and that undertone always, when you get the city officials around the table to talk about it, is the public safety issue of, if we allow this activity in our community, are we inviting the DEA to come in with their helmets and their guns into our city. And I think without that fear, we're going to be able to see regulations throughout the state of California that are safe and effective. And we need them because we need to show Washington that this model works, that we do not need the FDA to take marijuana away from us, turn it into a generic pill, and have us go get it at the pharmacy. We know now that of the 300 some medicinal strains, patients anywhere from suffering from anxiety to spasticity to, AIDS-related illnesses, chemotherapy, there's a strain that helps with all of that I don't think that our pharmaceutical companies are any way, shape, or form ready to try to synthesize that into a pill when the natural herb is working. So this is an opportunity for us to show that this is an herbal therapy. It's a supplement to the human endocannabinoid system, and the way we're dispensing it to patients here is safe.
Yeah, I think the evidence is in, and people have seen throughout the dozen years of California's Prop 215 that the sky hasn't fallen. Nothing terrible has happened to the people that are using marijuana medicinally or to the other people in the state who are actually benefiting from the sales taxes and all the other jobs and revenue that are created.
Absolutely right. I hope that's exactly what they're seeing. Is there's no increase in crime, there's no increase in traffic accidents, there's no increase in death. If anything, there's an increase in the coffers at our Board of Equalization because the dispensaries have seller's permits and they're paying tax on what they're selling.
Now, another issue that's happened in Southern California, or just California in general here, was this week's announcement of the Department of Motor Vehicles that the mere existence of your medical marijuana permit is not reason enough to be able to suspend your license, which had been happening in 8 different California counties. What's your reaction to this new policy?
I think it's good. I'm glad that the buttons were finally pushed, and that's usually what it takes, whether, it's a department of the bureaucracy or with law enforcement, is to put the problem right out there in the carpet and demand a change in policy. So, yes, having yet another California department with an actual policy memo in place to show that they are not going to treat medical cannabis patients any differently than patients who take insulin or patients who have to take pain pills or anything else is very good news for Californians.
Before we wrap things up, Dejay,
to show an example also to the other states that are really watching California grapple with all of the issues around medical marijuana.
Yeah, I think it is a good example. And before we wrap up the interview, would you like to let our listeners know about your website and how they can get involved?
Oh, absolutely. Our website is CannabisSavesLives.com, and our most recent story there right now is about Eric Holder's statement and the cautious optimism of Southern California. And people can also sign up to get email updates from us on our website right there, and they can donate as well. We are a charitable 501c3 helping patients throughout Southern California, just like Rich and Joanne.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dejay. And Terry, as we wrap things up, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, just so the listeners are aware that also that we had Rich and Joanne on the show just last week.
That's right.
And so it's really wonderful to hear that everything's turned around for them.
Yeah.
I'm really happy about that. And also, I just want to say that we as people who support medical cannabis, and when Dejay explains how there's so many different strains that help so many different types of illnesses, this is the information that people on the in the general public don't know. Like, I had to deal with a man asking me how much a lid was, and I go, wow, that is a really old term.
Yeah.
and it's just and I go, well, it helps people. Oh yeah, right. And they have that sort of attitude towards it, which is, I'm sorry that Reefer Madness, made everybody stupid for, 30 years, but, I think that as consumers, and patients, that we need to keep educating, even if it's in our personal lives.
Yeah. People have no idea, how how true and beneficial this is. And I'm looking over in my office here at a calendar I got from Harborside Health Center, and it's a calendar listing these, it's got a different strain for each month, but along the sidebar, they've got really accurate listings of, potency and what type of, conditions it would be best suited for and so on. People in California and elsewhere around the country have really developed this and really studied it, in quite a bit of detail. So, it is just as valid as any other medication. And to go along with that too, one of the things I always hear, Terry, is when, you tell people about these strains and they have the names like White Rhino or, Black Widow or whatever. And they kind of joke about that. Like the names are a joke. But just yesterday I did a story where I was listing these pharmaceuticals that they had this particular guy on, clozanapam and clonopapin and all these crazy names. I mean, You talk about the crazy names. It's the pharmaceuticals with the X's and the Z's and the Y's in them that are crazy.
You can't even pronounce them.
I know. It's amazing.
Unless it's like Vicodin. Everybody knows that name.
That's right. Well, Terry and DeJay, thank you so much here for filling us in on what's happening in California. It's really exciting time here in marijuana law reform, and we'll have you back on again sometime. Thanks a lot, guys.
Look forward to it, Russ. Thank you.
I'm Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML. Have you heard about the new super pot that's supposedly 20 times more potent than your father's Woodstock weed? Don't believe the hype. Marijuana's THC potency has always varied, even in the 60s and 70s. And the drug czar's numbers are full of, well, exaggerations. While no intoxicant is harmless, cannabis is non-toxic and far safer than alcohol. No matter how much you smoke, of whatever potency, you cannot die of a marijuana overdose. Potency is irrelevant anyway. More potent pot just means you smoke less of it, meaning less harmful smoke in your lungs. This is a prime example of harm reduction in action. Besides, the government already allows the prescription of THC pills. Its commercial brand name is Marinol, and it's 100% potent. Meanwhile, the federal government won't allow dying people to use natural marijuana, no matter what the potency. Does this make sense to you? Learn the facts about pot. Visit NORML.org today.
The battle to end adult marijuana prohibition can sometimes seem endlessly frustrating and impossible to overcome. One way we bond as a community and draw strength to continue is by rejuvenating our spirit through art and music. The Marijuana Music Awards exist to recognize those sonic artists in all genres of music who feature a ganja-friendly message to motivate and inspire all the cannabis community. Our daily Toker Tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, feature the finest in blues, rock, jazz, hip-hop, rap, reggae, country, bluegrass, and dance music to enhance that 420 feeling and refresh all you stashers for another day on the front lines of the drug war. Enjoy this cut from MarijuanaMusicAwards.com and visit our blog at stash.normal.org to learn how you can vote for your favorites and enter your Toker Tunes in the 2009 Marijuana Music Awards. On Rockin' Thursday, we rock on with Grower Man by Old Bull from the hills surrounding Los Angeles. Old Bull is like a deep drink of Kentucky bourbon, followed by a long hit of homegrown. With roots in punk, country, bluegrass, and blues, Old Bull's slamgrass music is honest, raw, and unpretentious. They are a creative force who haven't succumbed to time. The band have released their new album, Manifesto, which delivers a new and powerful, yet traditional sound, with heartfelt conviction. Manifesto is a treat for the ear which defines the slamgrouse sound of Old Bull. Check out more about this great band at oldbull.net and myspace.com/oldbull. And registered stashers get a special MP3 download of this tune. It's Grower Man by Old Bull.
Hey. McGovern. Been here 4 long years and I won't amount to nothing, tasting whiskey with my tears. But I got a little basement, there's flowers down below. My gift indeed is to use the weed and also to make it grow. Make it grow. Make it grow. And I'd give me a little money, I'd give me a little doge. If I'm next door to a cover police, I should be good to go. Just to help the sick and needy, I'm taking all this risk. And if you try to take that away, a man like me gets pissed. He gets pissed. He gets pissed. Right in the San Fernando Valley, it's where I make my rent. And the weed that has been freed from seed is surely heaven sent. Cause it saved me from eviction, it stabilized my soul. I even got a permit for my California grow. It's a grow. Watch it grow. I know, but Ashcroft's men are coming, they're pissing down my neck. You'd think they'd think of a better way to earn their weekly check. Raiding cancer patients' homes that needed to stay alive. You can pass whatever laws you want, but I'm a gorman until I die. Until I die. Until I die. Bye.
76% of Americans no longer support arresting and jailing marijuana smokers, and nearly as many support the medical patients having access to medical marijuana. And over 80% of our citizens now believe the war on drugs is an ineffective failure. So the question is, when will the government's misguided war on adult marijuana smokers finally end? When? Simple. When you and your like-minded friends, family, and coworkers get involved with an organization such as the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, also known as NORML. My name is Keith Stropp, and I founded the organization in 1970. Contact us at NORML, toll-free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's up-to-date webpage at www.norml.org.
Time now to look to the Midwest again for some more marijuana law reform efforts, and there's nobody doing a better job out there than Tanya Davis from the Ohio Patients Network at ohiopatientsnetwork.org. She's also affiliated with North Ohio NORML, which you can reach at northohio.norml.net. And Tanya, welcome back to the Stash.
Hi, Russ. How are you?
I'm doing great, and you've got a really important story that people need to hear about here, about a medical marijuana patient, a woman by the name of Susan Stevens. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Susan, what the case is all about, and how our listeners can help?
Okay. We've got a 62-year-old grandmother here in Mansfield, Ohio, who was visited by the Mansfield Police Department last year, September 19th. And they found marijuana plants in her backyard. Now, she was using this as a medicine and growing for her own use. She did not realize that she was going to be in as much trouble as she's in right now. Because, like I said, this is a grandmother that's never been in any trouble. So, she got indicted by the Richland County court system
January of this year. She's been charged with cultivation of marijuana and possession of marijuana. She is facing anywhere from 1 to 5 years. It started out 15 years, I understand.
Oh, man.
That's a death sentence
Yeah.
for this woman.
Yeah.
You know, and with these laws as screwed up as they are, this woman could die in the prison system. So we're trying to prevent that. I went down and I visited Susan, and if you guys would meet her, you would fall in love with her. She is, like, phenomenal. But we could not let her case go unheard, just like we stood up for Randy Brush. If you remember a couple years ago, Randy Brush was sentenced 3 years for growing 4 plants. Well, can you imagine a 62-year-old female getting charged for 30 plants? Okay, so we're really scared for Susan. North Ohio NORML took on the financial responsibility of Susan's case, and we're going to be having fundraisers, and we're trying to reach out to the world to try to help us manage those costs. It's gonna, we need to raise like about $5,000 or $6,000 for her legal defense, which is crazy. But with these laws the way they are, we needed, to know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we are going to be having fundraisers and stuff like that. We want to invite folks to come up and attend our fundraisers.
And these will be announced on the North Ohio NORML website?
Yes.
Okay.
And you can also make financial donations.
Oh, great. How can they do that?
To go to the northohio.normal.net.
Oh, great. And then just online form there?
Yeah, we've got a PayPal there.
Oh.
And in the subject line, we need them to, put that they want it for the Susan Stevens Defense Fund.
Right. Okay.
But we want the world to get involved. She's got a trial coming up on the 26th of this month. What I really, truly want to do is get folks to write letters, make phone calls, and to tell this judge and tell this court system that they need to show compassion for Susan Stevens. She had not intended to sell a crumb. All she was trying to do was grow it for her own use. She has never denied growing it. She wasn't even really trying to hide it. It was in her backyard.
Now, you mentioned phone calls and letters. Do you have the addresses or numbers?
Yes, I do. The judge that's involved in this case, believe it or not, is a constitutional type judge. He has been fighting for the right to keep the 10 Commandments in his courtroom.
Oh, I see.
Okay? He also lives the Amish lifestyle, so he's aware of the natural benefits of different holistic type things. His name is Judge James DeWeese, and his address is 50 Park Avenue East, Mansfield, Ohio, 44902. There's a phone number, 419-774-5567. Now, I want respectful calls. I want respectful letters sent.
Of course.
Because all I want to do is get the world to show and stand up for the folks here in Ohio.
Yeah. Could you give us the zip code and the phone number once again?
44902 is the zip code. The area code 419-774-5567.
And I'll post this up on the Stash blog so people can log on and write it down when they have the chance, too.
Well, what I want folks to do is send respectful letters, just educating them. And they need to do it quickly because the trial has been set for the end of this month.
Okay,
we want to educate them. Maybe someone can call. Maybe I'll call and see if there's an email address that we can flood their email. But I just know that Susan's life is worth fighting for, as the millions of patients all over the country.
Absolutely. Tanya, do you know how Judge James and his last name, how it's spelled?
Capital D-E, capital W-E-E-S-E.
Okay. Judge James DeWeese, 50 Park Avenue East, Mansfield, Ohio, 44902. The phone number is 419-774-5567, and the trial is taking place on the 26th of March, so get those calls and letters in. And again, be respectful, but get those calls and letters in.
They could send her to prison.
Exactly. There's no need. There's no
need. So we need to do this respectfully. All we need to do is educate this judge, educate the viewers, and hopefully the listeners. Maybe some of them's in the jury pool for Mansfield.
That's right.
And maybe they can do that jury nullification, which would be cool.
Right, and that's something we should remind everybody about, is that juries cannot be punished for their verdicts, and it's a long-standing tradition in our common law that juries can nullify a law. And what that means is when someone's on trial and the judge says, well, they broke the law, and does the facts of the case prove that they broke the law? Even if that is proven, even if the person has been proven to break the law, the jury can nullify that. The jury cannot vote to convict due to it being unjust. And in the case of these medical patients, there's nothing more unjust than throwing someone in prison for trying to treat their condition.
That's true. And you know what? There's a lot of folks standing up for the rights for juries.
Yeah, and if you want to know more about that, check out on the web at the Fully Informed Jury Association. That's FIJA.org. Sorry to interrupt there, Tanya. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our listeners about the case or what's happening in Ohio?
I would love to talk about what we've done in Ohio. The Ohio Patients Network and North Ohio NORML have been very, very busy here in Ohio. The last 6 months of last year, we had a bill introduced on May 21st. It was Senate Bill 343, and it's called the Ohio Medical Compassion Act. We also had it heard for the first time, November 19th. November 19th, we had testimony from our first medical support. We had Dr. Richard Wyderski come in and testify before the Criminal Justice Committee, and all the members were there, which is like really cool within itself, is that none of them played hooky. We had Mary Lynn Mather, one of the founders of Patients Out of Time.
Mm-hmm.
She came in and gave brilliant testimony as well.
Yeah, she's been on the stash
so we
before.
got their ear, and we thank God for the folks that have not forgot about Ohio. Dr. Richard Wyderski is from Dayton, Ohio, working at local hospital as an internal medicine geriatrics doctor, which, if this law would have been made into law last year, then Susan wouldn't have to go through this.
That's right.
So now our push is to get this reintroduced. Our sponsor, Senator Tom Roberts, has been appointed to the Civil Rights Commission here in Ohio. And that's going to be a plus because he's with the Strickland administration now.
That's very
so
good.
God is placing the right people in the right places.
That's good to hear.
I was very sad when I heard that the senator would not be reintroducing the bill this year. But when I found how blessed he is to go over to the Civil Rights Commission, then that just made it all better, I also, in January, attended a fundraiser for Governor Strickland here in Dayton. And I met him personally and talked to him, and he assured me that when the Ohio Medical Compassion Act goes through the Senate and the House and comes across his desk, that he will sign it into law. So that is a big plus.
That is fantastic. That helps those legislators when they know that their work won't be for naught because of some governor wanting to veto all their hard work. So that's really good to hear.
And a lot of good things are, we're doing this grassroots style. We are doing this totally with no grant money.
That's even better.
We are doing this from the love of our heart and from the donations that come in. I also want to put my MySpace up, please.
Oh, go right ahead.
MySpace.com/MMJ Action Network.
Well, we want everyone to get out there and donate to the Ohio Patients Network and to North Ohio NORML.
Yes,
the websites are ohiopatientsnetwork.org and northohio.normal.net. And, well, thank you so much, Tanya, for joining us here on the Daily Audio Stash.
Thank you.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with some reminders from our activist agenda at stash.normal.org/agenda. And if you want to get your reminders posted on the calendar, send me an email at stash@normal.org. Coming up on Friday night at 8 o'clock Pacific time on Ustream.tv, you can catch Cannabis Common Sense. Then next week on Tuesday, March 10th, we have hearings at 10 a.m. Eastern Time in New Hampshire for House Bill 648 for medical marijuana, and in Montana at 8 a.m. Mountain Time on House Bill 541 for decriminalization. And set your DVRs to record on Friday, March 13th. ABC TV presents a 2020 John Stossel report on legalization of marijuana in America. Thanks for downloading the Stash and helping to make us the growing truth about cannabis in cyberspace. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.